She was the Jackie Kennedy of the Middle East, a woman crowned in 1,500 diamonds, who turned a desert kingdom into a global capital of culture. Her face graced the covers of every major Western magazine, from Vogue to Time. But today, her name is a ghost. To the current regime in Tehran, she's a criminal, a symbol of excess. But to a new generation of Iranian women fighting in the streets, she represents something else, a symbol of a stolen future. How did the world's most glamorous empress end up with nothing but a handful of Iranian soil in her suitcase? This isn't just a story about fallen royalty and gold-plated palaces. This is the blueprint of a revolution that never truly ended. Farah Pahlavi was the architect of a modernity that was too bright for its time. And the price of her vision was a lifetime in exile. In this video, we go beyond the scandals to find the woman the world forgot, but Iran can't help but remember. Born into an aristocratic but struggling family, Farah's story didn't begin in a palace, but in the lecture halls of Paris. She was an architecture student, young, brilliant, and fiercely independent, dreaming of rebuilding her country with blueprints, not crowns. Fate intervened at an embassy reception where she met the Shah. He was a man looking for a queen who could do more than just provide an heir. He needed a partner to help him drag ancient Persia into the 20th century. Their wedding was a spectacle that rivaled the sun itself. Farah walked down the aisle in a Dior gown stitched with silver thread and encrusted with pearls, carrying the weight of a 10-pound tiara. But beneath the diamonds, she remained an architect at heart. While the world saw a fairy tale, Farah saw an opportunity. She became the first woman in Iranian history to be crowned empress, granting her a level of power no woman had held for 1,000 years. She didn't spend her time in silk-lined rooms. She went to work. She founded leper colonies, launched art festivals, and began a massive project to buy back Western masterpieces, building a collection of modern art that would eventually be worth billions. She was the bridge between the West and the Orient, the face of an Iran that was becoming the envy of the world. But as she built her museums and universities, she didn't realize that the ground beneath the throne was already starting to shake. By the mid-1970s, the dream was beginning to bleed into a nightmare. While Farah was opening world-class museums and hosting Andy Warhol, the streets of Tehran were whispering a different story. The Shah's White Revolution had brought industry and women's rights, but had also brought a secret police that ruled through fear. The gap between the glittering elite and the traditional masses had become a canyon. And in the center of it all was the 2,500-year celebration of the Persian Empire, a feast so lavish, so staggeringly expensive, that became the spark for a national forest fire. While the royals toasted with the finest French wines under silk tents in the desert, millions of Iranians were struggling with rising costs and a deep sense of cultural betrayal. Religious leaders, led by the exiled Ayatollah Khomeini, framed Farah not as a reformer, but as a corrupter, a puppet of Western decadence. Farah tried to warn her husband. She visited the poor. She walked through the crowds, sensing the tectonic plates of society shifting beneath her feet. But it was too late. The Shah was ill, his grip on power was slipping, and the whispers in the alleys had turned into a roar in the streets. Black Friday saw the city turn into a battlefield. The once glamorous empress now sat in a palace surrounded by tanks, listening to the sound of her own people chanting for her blood. The modernity she had spent 2 decades building was being dismantled in a matter of weeks. The crown wasn't a shield anymore, it was a target. On January 16, 1979, the sky over Tehran was gray, matching the cold silence inside the palace. There was no grand ceremony, no final salute, just a small group of weeping staff and the distant, muffled sound of a city in chaos. As the Shah and Farah walked toward the silver Boeing 707, they weren't just leaving a country, they were leaving an era. The Shah was so frail he could barely climb the steps, but Farah stood tall, hiding her eyes behind dark glasses. In her hand, she carried a small wooden box. Inside was a handful of Iranian soil, the only piece of her homeland she was allowed to keep. As the plane leveled off, they watched the snow-capped mountains of Iran vanish into the clouds. They thought they would be gone for a few weeks. They would never return. The betrayal started almost immediately. The friends they had entertained, the presidents, the kings, the power brokers, suddenly found them inconvenient. One country after another slammed its doors shut. The most powerful couple in the Middle East became the world's most famous refugees, drifting from Egypt to Morocco, from the Bahamas to Mexico. They were hunted by assassins and haunted by the news from home, where their supporters were being executed and their legacy was being erased with sledgehammers. In a small hospital in Cairo, less than 2 years after leaving the throne, the Shah passed away. Farah was left alone in a world that no longer had a place for an empress, watching from afar as the Iran she built was replaced by a wall of black veils. Decades have passed, but for Farah Pahlavi, the clocks stopped in 1979. Today, she lives a quiet life in Paris and Washington, a grandmother who still carries the title of empress in her heart, even as the world around her changed forever. She has outlived her husband, 2 of her children, and the empire she helped build. But history has a strange way of circling back. In the streets of modern-day Tehran, the black veils she once feared are being torn off. A new generation of women, who never knew the monarchy, are now shouting the same slogans of freedom that were whispered in her palace hallways 50 years ago. They're looking back at old, grainy photos of Farah, not as a symbol of excess, but as a glimpse of what Iran once was and what it could be again. The regime tried to bury her legacy, but they only succeeded in making her a legend. Her story is a haunting reminder that progress is fragile, and that even the most glittering empires can vanish in a heartbeat. Farah Pahlavi remains the empress in exile, waiting for a day she may never see, the day she can return the handful of soil she took with her and finally lay it back where it belongs. Because as the fire of revolution burns once more in Iran, one thing is clear. You can ban a name, you can burn a portrait, but you can never truly kill the memory of a queen who dared to build the future.